Hello and welcome to another installment of Political Election 2020. I'm Ian Smith, and as always, I'm joined by Connor Allen.
Hello, everyone.
So, Connor, yesterday I was having a conversation with my brother. I said to him, if the Republicans want to win this election, the best thing that they can do is piss off the Democrats, because when they're angry, when they're annoyed, they show their true colours. And this is exactly what's happened last night on CNN. Don Lemon, the smartest man on television, suggested that they should blow up the entire system in response to Trump's nomination for the Supreme Court.
A very measured viewpoint, very centrist, normal viewpoints, as ever.
Exactly. But before we jump into this one, anyone that is enjoying our content, please take the time to consider subscribing or clicking the notification bell, which will give you a notification whenever we release a new video. And please share, comment, like as well. That's the best thing you can do if you want to help push out this content and push out this viewpoint to your friends and family. So let's jump straight into this one. I'm going to play the clip from CNN last night in question when Don Lemon was speaking to Chris Cuomo on their nightly handover.
No matter what happens, everybody sticks with their team.
We're going to have to blow up the entire system. And you know what we're going to have to do?
No, I don't know.
You know what we're going to? Yes,
Yeah.
what you have to do?
You just got to vote.
Honestly, from what your closing argument is, you're going to have to get rid of the Electoral College. Because the people...
I don't see it.
Because the minority in this country decides who the judges are and they decide who the president is.
But you need a constitutional amendment to do that.
And if Joe Biden wins, Democrats can stack the courts and they can do that amendment and they can get it passed.
Well, you need
That's a
two-thirds
danger.
vote in the Congress and three-quarters of the state legislatures.
They may be able to do that.
Maybe. No matter what.
Connor, what do you think? What do you think
It's exactly as you said, isn't it? They show their true colours. You really have to hate America so much whenever you don't get your way to tear down the system, don't you? And that's all they do. They just promote it time and time again. They have their goals, and they consider their goals to be so noble. They consider it to be so of a higher order that they will tear down the greatest democracy the world has ever seen in order to achieve it. It's just so extremist, isn't it?
It is crazy. And here's the thing is that, obviously, yeah, there's Trump bashers everywhere. I mean, all over Europe, we see it. In the UK, he's not particularly popular. Across Europe, he's not particularly popular. I think that's to do with the biased media and the way that they portray him on a regular basis, and because people don't actually listen to Trump and the words that come out of his mouth. But America has, like you say, one of the greatest democracies, probably the best democracy of all time. It really is a bastion of free speech and, liberty and people being able to live a free life and to go about carving their own future and pathway, right? It's something that most people look up to, something that they aspire to. And the Democrats really don't know. It really seems that they don't know what they have, that they're so willing to rip up something, a constitution that has been standing there for hundreds of years, largely unchanged. Obviously, there's been, various amendments, but the spirit of the Constitution remains, right? Which is that it creates this very stable democracy. It's hard to enact significant change, and the Democrats just seem to be so willing to rip it all up whenever they don't get their own way, and it will destroy America if they do get their way.
Absolutely. And look at what Don Lemon's saying there. The minority decided judges in this country. That's not true. But for what was it, 300 years America's been in existence, and in a handful of elections, the president has won the election whilst not gaining the popular majority, right? So this is clearly a false statement. Or even if it's not a false statement, it's not indicative of a need for a greater change. But, in the moment, in 2020, the Democrats have a slight bump. They have a slight step back. And you have leading Democrats. Okay, he's not, a politician for the Democrat Party, but you have a leading leftist.
Yeah, he's a leading commentator, right? He's a leading commentator for the left.
Absolutely. And he's calling for the destruction of a system that has worked well for hundreds and hundreds of years. It's nonsense. It's crazy.
I mean, not only that, he doesn't... I said sarcastically he's the smartest man on television. He doesn't seem to understand exactly how amendments are made to the Constitution. In his mind, it seems to be that if the Democrats get in, they can stack the courts, and then that's it. That's all they need to do. They can make changes.
End of story.
Yeah. And I never really thought I would see myself agreeing with Chris Cuomo, so much, But his sentiment there, he comes across as a guy who's like, what are you doing? Like, you saying things like this, it's not going.
You could see him recoiling, can't you? You can see him cringing.
He actually gets it. He seems to get it. He seems to get it, because all that's going to happen if the Democrats continue to talk like this, to produce rhetoric like this about, well, we're going to stack the courts and we're going to rip up the system, we'll get rid of the electoral college and we'll do this and we'll do that. All it does is it pushes all of those, independent voters, maybe even some lean Democrat voters who were turned off by Trump. All it does is it pushes them to Trump, because actually they quite like the system. They quite like living in the richest country in the world, and they don't want to see any dramatic change happening.
Oh, you're absolutely right. And you were saying, Don Lemon, maybe he doesn't quite understand the system. Maybe that's why he wants to tear it down, right? Like, because he just doesn't get how it works. But the voters do. The voters are educated, and the voters know how this thing works. Most American voters love America. And what's the most American thing you can do? It's vote. Every American loves their elections. Okay, and they know how it works, and they don't believe for a second this crazy Democrat propaganda so clearly comes at the same time as you have leftist mobs burning down cities and burning down small businesses. They come as a package, and most voters are absolutely repulsed by it. They want safety, security, and jobs. The Democrats aren't going to give that to them when they're calling for the dismantling of the system.
Right, exactly. So if you look at this election, this campaign, who have the Democrats aligned themselves with? They've aligned themselves with these radical Marxists in the BLM. They advocate, riot, or refuse to condemn riots and violence, refuse to acknowledge what's happening. So already, if you're a swing voter, you're seeing all of the violence that's happening in, maybe your city or your state or whatever it is, how local it is to you. You've seen a Democratic Party that just seems willing to let it happen because they're afraid to confront the mob, concerned about what it will do for their polling, right?
I don't even think they're afraid to confront it. I think that they're using the mob to get their extremist agenda into play. Or at least some of them are, okay? Some of them aren't. Some Democrats are very centrist, very sensible. But most of them, well, maybe not most of them, but there is a certain section of them who are aligning with this mob because they do genuinely believe things like Don Lemon saying, tear down the system, build a new America.
Yeah, I think some of them do, but I also think when you look at, for instance, like the mayor in Portland and places like this, it seems to me that they're concerned about creating too many enemies, and they obviously want to maintain the power that they have. And this is what it always is about with Democrats, is that they just want power for power's sake. They just cannot accept this idea. And you know what? I'm going to quote Obama here on this one. They cannot accept this idea that elections have consequences, right? Because the Republicans won the presidency. They have a Senate majority. They had a House majority 2 years ago for 2 years. Their ideas and policies just aren't popular. People voted against them. Their candidate wasn't popular. People voted against them. The Republicans won, and now they're enacting the change that they won on, the mandate that they won on. This is what happens. When this happens, you don't threaten to tear up the system. What you do is you advocate your policy and the way that the change that you want to see, the way that you view the world, the future.
You put it in front of the voters, and the voters decide whether it's valid or not, right?
Yeah, exactly. And
but what you've seen, this isn't good enough for the Democrats, Ian. Because what you see is they come up with this far left agenda every so often, and it's always rejected. In fact, it's rejected across the world. We saw with Jeremy Corbyn in the United Kingdom. The socialists in France have been destroyed. In Italy, they've been ripped apart. In Spain, they're faltering. Okay, it's far left radicalism, because from their point of view, their truth is the only truth available. The voters don't like it. No one likes it. They reject and humiliate the left every time. So they have to find other ways to gain power, destroying the system. easiest way to do it.
Yeah, and they're happy to undermine, uproot a system, like you said, that's been around for hundreds of years, that has led to America being objectively okay, there's various metrics to decide it, but if we're just talking about sheer power, economic power, military power, all of these significant metrics, America is objectively the biggest, greatest country in the world, and it's
but at least a special country.
Yeah,
even if you disagree with this, a special country.
Yeah, that to me, I think that has happened off the back of the Constitution, the values that exist in the majority of American people's hearts, right, day to day. So if they want to see some change, they need to put forward a policy that's popular, and they need to get people to vote for it. But just because their policy isn't popular, this idea that they want to uproot and destroy a system that is precious, really, really is precious in today's society. When you look across the ocean from the American perspective, to the left and to the right, you see dictatorships everywhere, communist states with just these real draconian rules, authoritarian.
In China, they're committing genocide as we speak, with the Uyghur people.
And, we should really hold a democracy like America's, like just to the highest regard, and aspire to have a democracy like that. So the idea that the left want to destroy it just shows that there is no limit there is no limit to how far they will go to gain power.
Absolutely. And the voters recognise it. The voters know what we're talking about. And that's why I think next week, when the polls come out, we're going to see a huge swing towards Trump, because it really has been an awful week for the Democrats, hasn't it? Failed on every single count. They've pushed the voters towards Donald Trump. Even the people who said they would never vote Trump are starting to waver. And that snowball is really picking up pace. Yeah,
100%. And when those polls do come out, we will be reporting on that and giving you our analysis on it. So more reasons to click the subscribe button, click the notification bell, and get notified whenever we bring a new video out. We will be reporting on any new polls that come out that are significant, or that we think are significant, as we close in on the election.